Hey, lovely. Welcome to the Kinky Coffee Break. Listen in as I chat with special guests from the world of conscious sexuality and beyond. Some of the chats will be about kink, but it's just as likely that we'll be talking about a wide range of perspectives and lived experiences about exploring hidden parts of ourselves and different ways to be in connection. I'm Lex, and I'm an embodiment-focused kink and sex educator, supporting people to explore the topics of sexuality, pleasure, intimacy, identity, and relating. A big focus of my work is around how kink, done ethically, can be used as a route to empowerment and to us becoming whole, integrated humans. As you might expect from a podcast on this topic, these chats may contain explicit language, descriptions of sexual acts, swearing, and/or themes that may be challenging to hear. Remember, listen to your body and choose what feels good for you. All right, let's go. So hello and welcome to this episode of the Kinky Coffee Break. And I am joined today by the wonderful Sian Johnson. And I'm going to start, as it is the coffee break, Sian, by asking you, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking in my Always Be Awesome mug, just to remind myself. I'm drinking a herbal love tea.
Gorgeous.
It's a love.
I'm a big fan of that one as well. Yeah. Cheers. So, would you be willing to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? I know we're going to be talking a lot about the work that you do today, but yeah, who are you?
Thank you. I'm Sian Johnson. I'm a sex coach for men and sexological bodyworker and wheel consent trainer. And what I do, I work with men, and primarily my work is around exploring pleasure. In fact, my mantra is pleasure as a catalyst for change. So men experience tantric massage. I'm running tantric fusion retreats for men who want to dive deeper into tantra or kink or pleasure. And I also have 2 online programs around sexual empowerment for men. So that's addressing issues around self-pleasure and sexual empowerment.
You saw me frantically writing down notes. Like, I need to ask you about that. Sounds amazing. So I was trying to recall how we met each other, and I can't think of the timeline now, but I imagine it was 2 or 3 years ago. We were both on a Conscious Kink practitioner training with the wonderful Shawnee Love. And yeah, I remember that being a really intense experience for me. And I think that was the first time I'd met you in person. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, like, it was quite a few years ago now, feels like.
It was 2 years ago.
Wow.
And I can remember our connection and this kind of glancing across the room at each other and knowing that there was going to be something amazing coming out of this. And our friendship is one of the most enduring relationships to come out of that training. So, yeah.
Yeah, that experience itself was profound. Like you say, the connections that come out of it. I feel like we've been in lots of different spaces together since in different capacities, but it's great. Yeah. So Sian is one of the people who I very often refer people to. It's great to have somebody else in the north of England who I feel really confident to kind of say, yes, this person can help you out. So yeah, it's been really great to get to know you over these couple of years. And I wanted to talk a little bit about today. I think we'll focus a little bit about empowerment in men, but I wanted to also understand a little bit about your story and like what brought you into this work. Like how on earth did you start working in the field of pleasure, first of all?
That's a really great question. I was burnout, basically at the point of burnout. I think I was probably on my 4th career at that point, and it wasn't working out for me, and I was just collapsing, basically. And a friend asked me, what kind of job would you want to do if you could do anything in the world? And I kind of felt into it for a while, and what came up was I wanted to be some kind of sex therapist, but I didn't want to be the talking kind. Didn't feel like that would be deep enough. So I didn't really know where to start, but I started with Tantra, and I spent 3 years with Jan Day, which was absolutely transformational. And also during that time, I trained in sexological bodywork, trauma awareness, conscious kink, consent, the wheel of consent, and loads of other things. I was just thirsty for knowledge and understanding. And I kind of, although I'm trained to work with all genders, I put myself through the mill thinking, oh, I should be doing this and I should be working with non-binary people and there should be, lots of shoulds, we all have those, don't we? But eventually I kind of realised that my niche is with men. A huge part of my personal journey is part of all of this training. They're not just dry learnings, it's heart-led, it's body-led. And we can't really offer this work until we've done the work ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And doing the work meant that I was able to heal my relationship with the masculine and really connect with men in a way that I'd never connected with men before. And so I just went with my niche, which is working with men. Yeah. And I love it. Really love it.
Yeah. And that really comes across both now and in all the times that I've encountered you in this work. And I think it's a really, really beautiful thing for someone to know their niche and to really own it. Because I think what can also happen is we listen too much to those shoulds and we try and serve everyone. But actually, knowing what you're really good at and offering that to the world. Oh, yeah. And I also feel what you say, that a real resonance and interest in the overlaps of what's led us into this work, and it's similar for me, coming from the corporate background and experiencing these burnout cycles that were just getting quicker and quicker and quicker, and then having a complete breakdown and all of that stuff, and then really having to take a step back and think, what's actually interesting? What's my heart calling me to do? Yeah.
And I'm so glad, Lex, that you did that you followed your heart and that you're offering to the world what you bring. It's amazing. And I also have no hesitation referring people to you. It's just so great to know that you're there and you're bringing what you are to the world. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Sian. Yeah. And I really like what you said about the trainings that we've done. So we've done some similar things. We talked about doing the Conscious Kink practitioner training, but as you mentioned, we're both sexological body workers as well. And it can look from the outside I know that we've both done lots of training, and it's you might look at these things and think, oh, it's just a professional training. But I think you touched upon something there, doing these trainings, yes, we're doing them to expand our skill set as practitioners, but you cannot not do the personal work in those trainings. You've done so much of this work in order to be of service. And I think that really shows. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something for me in there about how can we expect our clients to go on a deep journey into pleasure and fantasies and personal growth. How can we expect them to do that when we've not done that journey ourselves? I'm not a man. I am quite clearly a cisgendered heterosexual woman. I'm not a man, but how can I understand a man's journey? I can understand it because I've had to heal the masculine inside of me, and I've healed my relationship with men. And as a woman, I experience how it is to be with men. And therefore I have a clearer picture how men show up in the world. And it gives a unique perspective for working with men. And I love that.
Yeah, so it's not, you can't have that exact same lived experience of being, socialized as male and being in the male body. But it's almost like you can give something that's even more valuable, perhaps, because you can bring forward your lived experience of going into the vulnerability of doing deep work. And it's that experience and that compassion for how vulnerable it is to do this work. Plus, you can kind of mirror and reflect back the experience from the female side. Yeah. So potent. So potent. And I'm curious then, like, we spoke about this being heart-led work, and it absolutely, like, I don't imagine that I could do this if my heart didn't call me to do it.
Yeah.
But what sort of helps you to get out of bed every morning? What sort of drives you? What keeps that fire, burning in you and keeps this alive?
Great question. Thank you. The mantra, pleasure as a catalyst for change, isn't just a marketing tool. It's a choice I've made on how I want to live my life. And that has helped me to shed what is no longer pleasurable and move towards what is pleasurable. So my work-life balance has changed. My ethos moving into the world has changed. My self-care has changed. My finding ways to explore pleasure, and that's not necessarily body to body, but ecstatic dance, walking, experiencing the sunshine. I know it's a bit random, but I've discovered tanning beds, and I really enjoy that 6 minutes of blast of UV, and just eating good food and moving my body, and all of those kinds of things that bring me joy and pleasure, as well as intimate connections. So and I bring that into my work. I always encourage men to experience vitality, to shed what no longer serves them, and to step into the things that help them to feel alive. It's one of the first steps of exploring pleasure and sexual empowerment is what helps you to feel alive. And a lot of men are kind of programmed to think that that's about sex, but actually it's much more about connection to themselves and the vitality within, the internal power within, and honouring that and taking that on board and finding pleasure in that, as well as, some of the softer stuff that men aren't encouraged to really celebrate, connections, cuddles, good conversation, eye contact, kissing, all of those things that don't necessarily have to lead to sex, but can be part of it. So, understanding why we want sex is a key part of that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that would definitely get me out of bed in the morning. I'm aware that, like, we're talking about your work with men and empowering men, and I'm imagining that some of my audience hearing this might have these thoughts going through their head, which I know that I might have had myself some years ago before being in this work, of like, men, like, we live in the patriarchy. Why do men need empowerment? And I'm curious what it was that you were seeing in the world. I think you've touched on it a little bit, but like, what were you seeing that kind of led you to think, well, men also need empowerment? Or like, what were you seeing that made you feel like they weren't already empowered?
I totally hear you on the, I spent a lot of my life going, men, fucking men this and men that and men the other. And, I've experienced quite a lot of sexual harassment and sexual abuse and sexual assault in my life. And it's all been by men and, all of that. Most people in female bodies have experienced that to some degree or another. So, of course, it's understandable that if you're not a man, that you're going to see men as all powerful and see the patriarchy as the kind of thing that oppresses us.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is, patriarchy and capitalism, they oppress all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And for so long, men have been told that they hold the power, but they don't really, I mean, I'm speaking in generalizations now.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be really clear that this is not all men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it is the species of men, have through generations and thousands of years followed this system of patriarchy and capitalism that has done as much to harm them as it has anybody else who's not a man. And these ideas that, they must be strong, must never be weak, that the feminine energy somehow is a weakness. And so they disown the feminine qualities within them, because we all have balances of masculine and feminine within us. We can't deny that. And so men are often encouraged to not cry. Boys don't cry. Work hard, play hard, step into competition, because this is the only way to grab power, to be powerful. The reality is, I'm sorry if you've lived your life this way, if you're listening to this, but a lot of that's just bullshit. It's a social construct. And actually, you are already powerful, but you need to access that power within you. And when you can access your own personal power that is unique to you, then you don't need to compete. You don't need to grab power. You can be vulnerable, and that can be a strength. It's powerful. Seeing a man be with his vulnerable feelings, that turns me on more than any man who's strutting around with, whatever they've decided makes them powerful. So men have been fed this lie as much as any other gender. And men are walking around thinking A, B, and C is what I need in order to be powerful. But in the reality, when we get to a point, and it's often around midlife, I think it's happening earlier for this generation, thank goodness. But for men of my age, when they get to midlife, they're often thinking, well, I've done all of those things. I've held power, and some men, most men are good men, so don't get me wrong. But they've held power, they've found their way into affluence and wealth. And, they've done the best they possibly can, but there's a question. And they're at the point of personal growth where they're going, well, there must be something else. Something's not quite right. Or they're at the point of sexual dissatisfaction, because often these things show up in the body as sexual dissatisfaction. And then they're at that point of going, there's more that I haven't discovered yet. And this is the time when men are often rewiring their thoughts and their beliefs around their place in the world. And sexuality for me is the key to help them unlock their true divine masculine power. Yeah. It's a hell of a journey to throw off all of these man myths and to discover what is truly in their hearts and the bodies and the soul. Yeah, it's a deep dive. I mean, it can be as light as a tantric massage and come for transformational healing. That can be light and fluffy and beautiful and deep and all of those things. And it can be as deep as going on a 6 to 9 month journey through the sexual empowerment program.
Wow.
It is geared towards that.
Yeah. And I feel in that like what's come up for me is like a remembering of when I started to do this work, and alongside some of the other people who I'd done my sexological bodywork training with. I know at the time, I don't know like what decisions they've made now, but I know that other people who'd been socialized as female were feeling a lot of like resistance or hesitation actually to working with men, and were kind of choosing their niche outside of that. And, I kind of was sitting on the fence a little bit, not knowing like, oh, I don't really know. But I didn't feel this strong sense of like not wanting to work with men, whilst I could understand why that didn't feel comfortable for them.
And what really surprised me is when I just decided to kind of open my doors and say, well, I'm open to working with anyone of all genders, that what I was seeing in male clients was a lot of the same themes as I would see in other genders. Like this real kind of sense of men also crossing their own boundaries a lot in different ways. And what I was seeing, I guess, was that, and this is again, like you said, generalizing massively here, and stereotypes of and binary genders. But men also having had quite a lot of experiences of crossing their own boundaries in terms of the things that they're willing to do. And because of the kind of heteronormative ways in which people see sex, it's like men are typically the active, doing, penetrating partner. And so for them, they'd been the person doing the thing that they didn't really want to do, as opposed to being on the receiving end. And that also, like, for a lot of them, creating really like traumatic experiences, especially when, the partner had wanted something that involved like sexual violence, like, or consensual sexual violence, and they've gone through and done that with their body, and realized afterwards, actually, I've crossed my own boundaries. So I've encountered a lot of that, and also just a real resistance, or like a feeling like it's not allowed for the people socialized as male to actually say what they want. They're not comfortable being in that receiving role, and like this pressure to perform and to do and always be kind of like the person doing. And it was just really shocking, I think, for me, because it isn't something I'd heard a lot about. Like, as soon as you said, like, I'd had a lot of experience myself of like sexual violence, boundary violations at the hands of men. Many, many, many females in my life had also experienced that, but hadn't heard the other side of this as well. And I just remember, that's coming up for me, and just that remembering like just how shocking that was at first, actually, to see exactly what you said, that like the patriarchy, all of these models of like what it means to be a man of power, they're not serving the men that I work with in any way either. They're also suffering. So it's beautiful that you are also like holding this work and holding the need for it, because it's so needed. And I feel curious about kind of like how this presents itself, because I know from my experience, male clients who approach me very rarely say, I feel disempowered. They come with another challenge. Right? They're not usually saying, oh, I'm having trouble with boundaries, I feel disempowered. They're usually coming with something else. And I'm curious, like, what experience you have of like how, or what are men actually coming with, that kind of the thing that feels really present and upfront for them.
Yeah, thank you. So a lot of my clients come in response to my programs around sexual dissatisfaction. So often what I find is that the wisdom of the body does not lie. Mm-hmm. And often sexual dissatisfaction is a symptom of something else going on. Yeah. Infertility, difficulty with erections, not having choice about when you come. Either that's, it's taking too long, or it's happening too fast. Low libido, performance anxiety, being in your head, feeling like you always have to take the lead and wanting to do something different, communication styles and intimacy, breaking down relationships that are breaking down, or sometimes extended periods of unwanted singledom, and often late virginity that can impact men's lives. These are all, I mean, they are what they are on the surface. And you can try and take a little bit of blue pill or a vacuum pump or a numbing cream or all of the other quick fix methods that are out there. But if those things haven't worked for you, something deeper is going on. And the body is trying to call your attention to that through the sexual dysfunction. So when I work with men, some of the the self-pleasure program is quite light. It's just, how can you pleasure yourself more? But the self-empowerment program, the sexual empowerment program, is much deeper in that we look at why some of these things might be happening for you. So they may be health related, or they may be psychological, or there may be some stored trauma in the body, or there may be some form of dissatisfaction in your wider life. Maybe you're bored in your life. Maybe you're working too hard. Maybe there's something there that needs to be addressed. And so it's all well and good to talk about tools and techniques and energy work and body work. And yes, all of that does happen. But we also talk about trauma, deeper feelings, dispelling man myths, stepping more into your healthy masculine power. We talk about power. You've written a beautiful piece for the program. Thank you, Lex, around that, around power. We talk about fantasies. And then later on, in the later stages, we talk about communication, how to improve communication, how to be vulnerable and be strong in that, and how to communicate with our partners, how to bring, if you're in a relationship, how to bring each other closer without it all being the focus around sex. We talk about oral sex and anal pleasure, and there's sex toys, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. And it's a deep dive, and it's uncomfortable, and it takes you from where you are now to where you want to be. Deep.
Oh, feel tingly. And I notice I feel kind of like excitement and just like, wow, this sounds incredible and juicy. And as you say, like it's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging doing a lot of that. And I can feel this sense of like frustration of like, this sounds like sex education we all should have had.
God, yes. Yeah. They talk about contraception, birth control, and biology, but they do not talk about consent, how to hold your own boundaries, how to listen to your body and what your body truly wants, how to communicate or negotiate your way out of a difficult situation, what to do when your nervous system collapses, because this is a really important foundational piece about what happens in our nervous system when we're faced in a situation that we feel uncomfortable in. What's going on? Are we freezing? Or are we in fight or flight and panic mode? Are we just collapsing completely? Are we trying to talk our way out of something or talk our way into something? All of these are trauma responses to being in situations where we feel uncomfortable. And it's not isolated incidents. It tends to be based on history from childhood that we can't even remember. Because people think trauma is the big T, the big, I had a massive car accident. And, that's how we tend to think about trauma and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but trauma is stored in our body in microscopic ways, and understanding how that influences our responses to other people, to our environment, or to the workplace, or to our boss, or to the environment, patriarchy. Understanding how we respond in those moments to these situations can help us reclaim our power, reclaim control over how we respond to the world. It's so powerful, so powerful. And it's an integral part of of the programs that I run is how to come back to you, how to notice what's happening in your own body. We call it, it's under the umbrella of embodiment, but it is exactly that, being in touch with what's going on. And of course, none of us are encouraged to experience these things. We're not taught these things. None of us are encouraged to be empowered in this way. And men particularly, because patriarchy says that boys don't cry, that boys are not meant to be in touch with their finer feelings. Therefore, a lot of boys and men end up cutting parts of themselves off in order to avoid appearing to be weak or feminine, or to engage the wrath of caregivers or bullies at school or whatever.
Gosh. Oh, I feel quite choked hearing that. And I recognise that in one of the things that strikes me is when I receive intake forms from different clients, one of the questions I ask in there is like, what helps you to come back to a feeling of safety if you become overwhelmed or dysregulated or feel unsafe, something like that. And the people who identify as male will generally say, I don't feel unsafe. That's an overwhelming response I get from most males. I don't feel unsafe. And it's only when you actually work together and you slow down and you come into the body and you feel it's like, oh yeah, you do also have those nervous system responses. Of course, we all have those built into us regardless of our gender, that we're constantly assessing our environment to see if we're safe. But there's something in that, like you say, it's like from such a young age ingrained into men that, like, you know, to toughen up, you know, to be tough, the tough guy. And I wonder, like you say, if that's that part that's like gets cut away, that part that is going, oh, I don't feel safe here. Actually, I am overwhelmed. I don't like this. I feel uncomfortable. You know, whether that's, you know, out in the world or in the bedroom with a partner, like it's still possible as a man that you could be feeling uncomfortable, overwhelmed, dysregulated, unsafe. And yeah, it feels like a big part that gets kind of, or that people attempt to kind of cut off or push aside, is that vulnerable part that's like, actually, I don't know if I'm safe here.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that's like a big part of the program that you run. It's actually like encouraging people to notice, because it's not always, like you say, it's not always big T trauma, and it's not always a massive, you know, flight response where you're literally running out of the room. It's the subtlety. It's the subtlety of that you have to attune to it again.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're teaching that. Oh,
thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful part of the work. Yeah.
And you mentioned as well about some of the parts that get pushed away, about kind of anything that might be deemed to be feminine, or like, you know, not tough or emotional, and I can't help but, you know, my mind go into my kind of realms of like using kink as a way to sort of explore these parts of ourselves that might be, as we'd say, in the shadow, or just that we're less comfortable or less integrated. And I'm curious whether you see sort of overlaps between the sexual empowerment program and kind of like kink, or is kink something that comes into it? I'm just curious.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I don't go into kink in the same way that you explore kink. It's not a deep part of the program, but I do explore power dynamics and the energy bubble, and how to consciously have power over somebody, and how to consciously bring that power back to yourself, you know, and also how to hand over your power to somebody, and then how to then have your power handed back to you. That can be a really beautiful exercise that kind of levels the playing field between partners. And they do it with me as a practitioner. If they work directly with me. They do that with me as a practitioner. And it can be really liberating for men to actually feel the energy of handing over their power and then being given it back, or to have the power, freely given to them instead of them having to work for it. Yeah. The power being handed to them so they can hold that for a little while and then hand it back. So there is some stuff around that. We do explore power in the context of patriarchy and capitalism and power dynamics in relationships. But mostly, I would say the power is, I notice I'm talking a lot about power and you asked about kink.
I mean, for me, you can't separate the two. So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I do quite a lot of work around fantasies and unearthing the core erotic theme, which is based on Jack Marin's work. So what is it that really floats your boat? What is it that gets you excited? Where does that come from? And how can you bring that into your life in a more conscious way? So it might be BDSM fantasies, it might be power play, it might be wanting to cross-dress, it might be wanting anal pleasure, it might be any one of those things, but it comes from a place of self-acceptance first. And in understanding these kinks can liberate them, can take them out of the shadows, and you can find ways of expressing that or exploring that with either professional practitioners like you or me or other practitioners, or with your partner, with the consent of your partner. So, and I think this power play can be really healing in kink, because what's the worst that can happen? I could feel physical pain, and then you step into physical pain, you might actually find that cathartic. Yeah. Or you might want to inflict physical pain. And then when that's done within boundaried, consensual environments with full agreement, and you and I both teach this, as do other practitioners, Shawnee Love as well. We teach this about how to negotiate consensual contracts. So you might want to hurt people. And when you bring that out of the shadows, when you own it and exercise it consciously, it stops this leakage, this leaking of grabbing and trying to do things by the back door, so to speak, that you're probably not even consciously aware of. So it brings it into consciousness. It brings it into awareness. And from awareness, you can begin to explore.
Hi, it's Lex here. We'll get back to the chat with Sian in just a moment. But I thought, as we're talking about kink and empowerment, that it would be worth mentioning for those of you who don't know that I run a few online courses on this topic. So I'm a big believer in kink as a tool for empowerment for all genders. And if you're listening to this when the episode goes out at the end of August, the next course will be starting really soon. So it's called Getting into Ethical Kink. And this one will be starting on the 29th of August. So there should be a little bit of time for you to still sign up if you're interested. And this is for anyone who's curious about kink, or maybe you've been dabbling in kink a little bit, but you're not really sure what you're doing or what you want to explore. Maybe you've read about some things or heard about some things, and you're interested, but maybe you're just not really sure how to do it all or where to start. This course is really sort of designed for you. It covers the really sort of foundational skills that will set you up for sort of safer explorations in this world. So I'll walk you through basically step by step things to be aware of before, during, and after play. And it's a beautiful, beautiful course. One of the things I love about it is, I think people take away from this not only sort of the soft skills for getting started in kink, but really like just a different view of what kink is, and some really transferable skills, should I say, around, how to engage in relating and intimacy more broadly. So that's starting at the end of this month. And for those of you who are specifically interested in learning about power play, you can either go on to learn about empowering kink, which is for people engaging in power play no matter what role. So looking at the power part of that and our relationship with power. And if you know that you want to step into the dominant role, I have a course just for that called Power and Presence, which is starting in September. You'll find all of these on my website, pleasurerebels.com/events. But just thought I'd mention it as it's coming up a lot in the chat. And would love to see some of you joining, whether it's this time around or next time around. But all right, let's get back to the chat.
I'm trying to remember the phrasing of what you mentioned at the beginning, because I'm really wanting to come back and ask a question about that. I think you mentioned that you're also doing something called a tantric fusion retreat. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Could you say a little bit more about that? Because that sounds really sexy and I want to hear.
Thank you. So tantric fusion retreats are 8 hours. They can be longer, but it tends to be an 8-hour retreat. And there's all kinds of activities that we can do in that 8 hours. And it's bespoke. So for example, somebody might want to come and learn tantric massage. Some people want to learn deeper tantric sexual techniques and Taoist tradition, from the Taoist tradition and Tantra tradition. Some people might want to learn how to pleasure their partner, and so a couple might come. Some people might want to explore kink. And so I work at the introductory end of when we look at like hardcore dominatrix or DOMs, and you look at the softer end, which might be massage with bondage, which I'm trained in. So I tend to work up at this end, the kind of introductory. So exploring fantasies, talking about what feels good, maybe even trying some power and doing the power bubble stuff. I'll get my kit out, and all my BDSM kit and all of those kinds of things. But it's definitely an introduction. And for anybody that wanted to dive deeper or had very clear fantasies that I don't feel able to fulfill, I would send them to you, Lex. So, but yeah, anybody who's on the edges of like, oh, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what I want, how I want, they can come to me and spend that time with me. So, and there's sexual partner surrogacy in there as well, potentially. For example, somebody might call me who hasn't got a sexual dysfunction, but maybe hasn't experienced intimacy for an extended period of time. I might suggest they come for a tantric massage first, and then if it feels right for them, then we might go into a day retreat where intimacy can be explored, but we go slowly and gently. We stay with the nervous system. We talk a lot, we laugh a lot, we eat, we play. Some people, a tantric fusion retreat can look like cross-dressing. Sometimes it can look like going to the theatre. Sometimes it can be like almost like the beloved experience, I call it, but it's almost like the girlfriend experience. So there's a lot that we can explore as part of those day retreats. But yeah, in the context of power and kink, I'm at the introductory end, people are just going, I've got these fantasies, but I don't know what to do with them. Just exploring gently that way.
Yeah. And I personally love doing like these longer sessions with clients, because I think it just makes sense through the lens of everything we're saying about like the nervous system. Like it allows that time for our nervous system to like settle and co-regulate, and there isn't, we're not rushing to like grasp at having a certain experience. And one of the things I love about doing these kind of things is like very often I have like a lunch break in the middle, which, you know, people can go and take on their own if they want, but often we'll sit together and have lunch, and it's those conversations that happen over lunch that then will inspire like where we'll go into next. So yeah, I think, yeah, it's beautiful. And it's interesting because I also sort of see myself as being on the more introductory level of kink. I'm definitely not dungeon dom. I am, you know, people who are kind of curious, maybe, you know, have been wanting to do something for a while, but, you know, people don't come to me because they want that hardcore experience. I still see myself as on the softer, but I guess the difference being like, so I don't do sexual partner surrogacy work. So like I'm probably lighter on the intimacy side. So my body's less involved in my sessions, I guess. But then I'm happy to go sort of deeper into the kink side. And I think that's probably why it works really well for us two to be able to go, oh, you know, very often I'm like, oh, okay, you're wanting the kind of girlfriend experience. Amazing. I know just the person. So yeah, wonderful. If I imagine people who are listening to this might be resonating with some of what you're saying about kind of, you know, feelings that they're having or challenges that they're having with sexual intimacy. And if they're listening to this and thinking, hold on, that sounds a little bit like what I'm going through at the moment. Where would someone begin? Like what advice would you give to somebody who could be listening to this and feeling like, you know, they're hearing a bit of their own experience in what you're describing your clients come to you with?
Thank you. So I think it's important for some self-reflection to understand, I mean, the technical language is pain points, but what are your pain points? Just try to understand and unpick some of that. Sometimes people are able to do that and go, oh, okay, when I think about it, this is the thing, this is the thing, this is the thing. And then sometimes with people, it's just like, it's too big. I can't look at it. I need help to look at it. And that's okay too. But understanding that there is some difficulty there is the first step. And then reaching out for support is the second step. So I've got a website, sianjohnson.com, and there's lots of blogs and articles and information there. And there's stuff around the programs that I run and the work that I offer. So that might be helpful. And if clients want to then get in touch and want to have a conversation, then there's an opportunity on the contacts page to arrange a consultation call with me, directly with me. And I usually find that's helpful because even if a client doesn't really know what they want, then I can usually either work with that or I can refer them to somebody who is more skilled in whatever it is the client's bringing. So, yeah. That's the route for me.
Yeah, great. And I think, yeah, that felt like a really important point when I heard that, as well as that it's okay to not know specifically what you want. One of the things I come across a lot as well is, you know, people will know that there's something in this field of sexuality, but first of all, they don't know what's out there, what's possible. They don't know what each person offers or does, or what sexological bodywork means versus sexual surrogacy. And like, I just want to acknowledge for anyone listening to this that yes, it is baffling. You know, even as someone working in this field, it can be hard to understand what all of these different roles are and what each person does. And it can be hard to pinpoint what exactly you want when you don't know what's possible, because we don't get taught that these practitioners exist. So yeah, it's okay. It's okay to not know very clearly what you want. We're also here to support with that part as well.
Yeah.
And
I think it's important to reach out, and any good practitioner like you or I, because we're ethical and fully trained and so on, any good practitioner will take time to support you to find out or to kind of point you in the right direction of where you might want to explore. So I have half an hour consultation calls and 45-minute consultation calls, so that I can really help clients get to the root of what it is that they're seeking or might be seeking, and then point them in the right direction, because I won't be the best practitioner for everyone. There are other people out there. And then for other people, I'm going to be absolutely spot on. And those are the clients I want to work with. Yeah. So integrity over sales is another one of my mantras,
Yes.
Absolutely. There's something else I wanted to say about that, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway.
Yeah. I just can't resonate. I'm doing the wiggly fingers of resonating with that, like integrity over sales. Like it really, I know from my experience, it's like this, as you say, it's heart-led work. And I have to believe in my heart that I can work with somebody and actually support them in what it is before engaging. So yeah, it's great to kind of take that time, join and take calls to just kind of like suss each other out, get a feel for each other. And is there anything that, I know there's just so much in this topic of empowerment, particularly for men, but is there anything that I've not asked that you'd like love people to know about you or your work?
I suppose it's been a huge journey for me, and I'm so excited and honoured to bring it to the world, not just based on my own experiences, obviously, but based on my training and the support and love of colleagues and therapists and supervisors and massage practitioners. I've got this whole basket of care around me that supports me to bring this work to the world. And and I suppose I have a set of skills, but that doesn't mean that a client coming to me doesn't also have their own set of skills. People are not broken. People are not fucking broken. People have some dissatisfaction in their lives, or they've got an issue they want to work in. That doesn't make them broken at all. And so when myself and a client sits down, I do my best to equalize the power in the space, because I'm an expert on this and you are an expert on your life. And when two experts get together, they can co-create something really amazing. So that's my intention. That's what I want people to understand about coming into this space with me. It's not a power over, it's a power with. How are we going to go on this journey together? We're building a relationship for your time here that we explore together. And that's really beautiful. I love doing that. I love going, I know you're scared of me. I know you're scared of what's coming, but you have all of the resources in you. You're not broken. Let's work together. And it's divine. I love it.
So thank you so much for taking the time today about your work. But just thank you for doing this work. Thank you for how much of yourself you bring to this, how much of your heart you pour into it. Like, it's a real honor to be a peer of yours. And thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lex. Thank you. It's been a joy. It's always a joy to connect with you. You are a wonderful human being, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life. And to, what you do in the world is incredible. And you are an incredible human as well. Thank you. It's been lovely.
You. Bye for now.
Bye.
Wow, Sian has such a depth of knowledge and experience in this niche around working with men. And in my experience with Sian, she has such a huge amount of integrity as well around how she approaches this work. And like we would tend to say as practitioners, like, she has done the work. And yeah, I hope that comes across really in kind of what she shared here, is like, I experienced Sian as someone who, doesn't use words flippantly. Like, everything that she's saying here hasn't come from some like conceptual knowing or reading of a book. This has come from doing the hard work, putting her body on the line, literally. And it just, yeah, I mean, she has so much gold to offer. And I think my takeaways from this conversation were really, just that remembering that men are also disempowered within the patriarchy, or, more broadly, the current systems of power that we live within. And that this disempowerment may be overlooked because it can come across in many different ways. And those ways can be really subtle as well. So it can be anything from experiencing performance anxiety to a loss of libido, from shame or boredom related to the sex that you're having or want to have. And, this is really important. The reason why, sexuality is a really key area in which we can help people to experience more vitality generally is that, sex is often the primary route through which men have learned to seek connection. But like everyone else, connection requires safety. And so this work is super, super important. And as I said during the chat, I'm really, really grateful that there's someone like Sian doing this work in the world. So I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for listening or watching. And thank you to the team, Molly and Tom, for all of your work behind the scenes to make the podcast happen. And we hope to bring you another episode soon. All right, bye for now.